So to be able to use this material on an object with multiple UV channels, first we have to make the object. So we're going to do a real quick spline-based vase. And what you need to do is make 4 of them, just so they're different. I want them all to look different. I want you to think through the artistic side of it too. But for us, we'll just make the one. So I'll just come into here and I'm going to go up to splines, which is just the line information for Max. And then I'm going to come to this point right here. And I'm going to say from the center of my vase, I'm going to probably put it to here maybe. I'll say from the center of my vase, and you can do this any way you want. I'm doing it with splines because it's fast for what we need it to be. So I'm going to put that in here. So I'm going to go line, and I'm going to say this is the center interior of the vase. So I'll click it out and say here's the base inside. And then I'll come up and I'll just do something maybe this big. I'd click once and don't drag. If you click and drag, it changes it to this curve, if you didn't know. So I always just do it the first way, which is click and not drag, because I can make those things work as I want. You want to have as least amount of points as possible. This is something I learned from my wife, who in UI stuff, you know, it's easier to get the curve clean if it's not, if it's not curved already. So therefore, the one thing I don't like about Max's UVs is that, and the change of this, not UVs but splines, is that there's no button to put them on one surface. So I'm going to pull this one out a little bit more, like that much. And then I'm going to do a modifier called lathe. So in it's rotate, I don't know what it's called in Blender, but it's all the same. Lathe, and the reason it's called lathe, it's because it's like a wooden lathe. And I have a video on this in my, if you want to dig around. But it uses the same principle, that it cuts a middle line down the middle of it and then it rotates it around itself. And if you've ever seen somebody work on a wood lathe, it's basically a big block of wood that's spinning on the center, and they use these chisels that break away. That's how you kind of get table legs and stuff. So when we do it at first though, it looks like this. Okay, so what's going on? Well, by default it's set to the center. And if we look at the center line of it is right there. That's a problem, because then it gives us that weird shape. So we really want it to be over here. And in Max, left is min, and right, just like a right to left thing. So min would be on this side of it, and then Max would be over here. And there we go. Now we got the vase kind of the same form. Don't worry about this stuff, I'll explain that in a minute. And then I can come back down and turn on the modifier here, and I can mess with how many surfaces there are. But now that I'm in here, if I'm in front viewport, you always want to build your splines in front, by the way. If I come in here and I just do a smooth and see what we get for a cheap one, let's just do this. And smooth doesn't always work. I'm just hacking it in for our purposes. Okay, let's see if these smooths work. Oops. It's horrible. Horrible. And at this point I can start to see if I really want how I want it to be, how wide it is, whatever. And I'm also making sure I grab everything, because it's going to grab the center ones too. I don't want it to clip through itself. I don't really care what the center looks like, but I always think it's a good idea to make the center, so if you're making something, it matches the way it's built. And then see, if I take this one and delete it, now I've got a little bit more of a slant on it. This one didn't get a smooth on it, so we'll try a smooth, or a Bezier. And all a Bezier is corners, and it's locked to whatever your last move was. So if I click on this, it's now locked in 2 directions, which is what we really want. And let's do this. Now, up. So whenever you get a curve inside of Max, what I'm seeing here, these subdivisions, are because they are subdividing it that many times. And you can control that subdivision by coming into, I gotta find it. Like I said, I'm in here sometimes, but not horrible. This is this way. And then threshold 40, I don't think that's it. That's it. Auto smooth, turn it off. Actually, it should be in here. Oh yeah, it's down here at the bottom. Usually mine, by the way, that's why I'm confused, because usually mine is like way, but since I've just installed this version max, way up here, so it's always underneath my rendering number. It's usually right there. So 6 means it's going to divide it 6 times from each vert. So if I change this to 3 or 2 even, that's probably enough. I can use, this will be easier to unwrap for one reason, but I can use this because I can then do turbo smooth or something to see. Even 1's probably okay. You know, you just have to remember it's going to curve it on its own after that point. So alright, so I'm going to say that's fine. We'll just do 1 for our sake of ease. And then I'm going to collapse it over poly. And then we're going to see this weird thing down at the bottom, but if we look at what it is, it's just that there's 16 vertices selected because they're all sitting right on top of each other. So that's the problem, is that they're overlapping. So if I just collapse these, say collapse, that fixes that problem. And there's probably the same thing in the interior. It's a little bit off on the interior, so usually I just go to 3 to go to border and then collapse again. And now they're all closed up. And then you can check and see if it did the smooth the way you wanted it to by just throwing a turbo smooth on it and see. Yeah, you get it back. But this way we only have to unwrap it this much. So I wouldn't go just to 1 because it doesn't give enough insinuation of the curve that you're trying to achieve. But at least at 2 you can see that much. So I'm going to come in here and then I'm going to unwrap it. And what I'm going to do is open UV Editor. I'm going to do that trick that we talked about before, where I go to Edge mode, and I click on this edge right here, horizontally, and I click this button. And then it makes this huge thing up here. And all I have to do is grab everything. Actually, I probably can just grab these two real quick and do a quick, flatten mapping, so it does that. And then I can just grab everything and do a pack UVs. Now it's all laid out for me. So that's pretty quick and pretty easy. Now the only question I have is I think it's doing it in the wrong direction. So if I look at it and I rotate it, that seems more correct. So like this is probably the interior, yeah, and the other side's the exterior. And that's one of the things you want to think about too, but for now, we're just going to take this object, break it, put them in here so they're the same height. Actually, I'll show you an old trick. Because we want to make sure we don't have a huge seam at this point, what you can do is right click after I break it, and I'm sorry, not even right click, come up to this little thing right here, it's called mirror vertically, and we can just click on this and go this way, and it'll just mirror it. So this was down here, and all I have to do now is put this together. And technically, you could get some weird stuff with baking, but we aren't actually going to be depending on baking for a lot of things, so don't worry about that. Then I can grab everything and just say weld. And now these are actually all synced together. So I can now come back out to 3, grab all of this, and do that mapping again, pack UVs, and see how big it gets. I don't know if I don't know why I did that, but I did. So I'm going to grab this, put these out of the way, and then I'm going to put these up here or something for now. What I haven't decided is the kind of scale I want for the texture that's going to be attached to it. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse it down to poly. And I'm going to use this stone texture we made on Monday. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to go to my materials, and find that stone texture, which is actually separated out, funny enough. The way I set up the materials here. So I'm going to fake it for now. I'm looking at my materials here. And then shift and drag it over here, just to make a duplicate of it for now to keep it away from everything else I was doing earlier. And we'll come back to this in a minute, but And then I'm going to just go ahead and say materials, general, and I'll put it into a metal rough in the base. And then I'm just going to attach it to the object, and we'll call this base material. You want to name stuff so you can remember to delete them too. Materia, like I'm in a Final Fantasy game. Okay. So I take a look at it, and now it's on there. I don't really want it shiny, so I'm just gonna not worry about the map right now. I'm just gonna turn the roughness way down, or way up actually, so it's not smooth. I'll take a look at it, and that looks great. So if I wanted to at this point, now I'm gonna grab it and go back to my UV Unwrap and go to my Open Editor, and then I'm going to say I really want this smaller. Let's pretend I do. So I'm just gonna either drag it up and turn on this so I can see it in 4 ways. So I really, the only two I have to make sure that are tiling is this one, sort of, but since I'm making it all 4 sides, I want to do this one because I know the texture tiles, it just wasn't tiling because this isn't a full size. And next we'll get into the materials.